Hey, wake up! It's time to start the show. Glad to see you all aboard Mouse Ears in Paradise. Let's get this show rolling.
Welcome to Mouse Ears in Paradise. I'm Dave.
And I'm Becky. And go ahead.
And we have a special guest today.
Yay, I'm so excited.
Robbie.
Hey, how's it going?
All right, so Robbie is a friend of the show. We've known each other for a long time.
Like, I don't know, 15 years probably?
At least 15 years if you start
At
to...
least.
Yeah.
15 or 16 years now.
I know. 15 or 16 glorious years. And we met through Mousetalgia, correct? Is that right?
Yep.
Is that how
I
we met?
was a fan of the show. It was like one of the first Disney podcasts that I ever found and started listening to, and went to a meetup at Disneyland and
that's
just went to a few of those. Yep.
Funny because that's not how I think of you. Like we now know each other from life outside of Disney, I would say.
Yeah.
So, but we wanted to bring Robbie on to talk about cruising. So we've talked a little bit about cruising on our show already, but Robbie, you had a unique cruise this summer. You went to where?
So we had a 12-day or 12-night European cruise from Southampton to Norway and Iceland, and then returning back to Southampton.
That's so crazy.
Which is a unique one time of year itinerary, and I believe they're not even doing it next year, if I'm correct.
That could be. It's a long cruise.
Yeah.
It's got to be one of the longer Disney cruises. I mean, I think maybe the the repositioning
there's a couple 14, but
and stuff, but like it's definitely up there
for sure.
Yeah.
So we wanted to talk a little bit about Disney and European travel. So we're going to start with that. So Robbie, can you tell us a little bit about the first part of your trip? You actually went to Disneyland Paris, and had you been there before?
No, so this was my first time in Europe altogether. And of course, going to Europe and we're right there. We're like, well, okay, so it was a group of 10 of us that went, a bunch of coworkers and us. So half of us decided, well, we're already there. We're going to go to Disneyland Paris. And I was in for that because, got to hit all the parks around the world.
Yep. Check them all off.
Yeah. So originally we were going to do Disneyland Paris at the tail end of the trip. And then we realized, the Olympics are going on and would be happening right in the middle of when that happens. So we moved it to the beginning of the trip. So airfare was still really expensive going into Paris directly from LAX.
Mm-hmm.
So we ended up, it was cheaper to fly into London and then fly to Paris.
Yeah, for sure.
So the flights weren't bad. The thing that I wouldn't do again is we had a 12 to 13 hour layover in London, and we wanted, first time in Europe.
Yeah.
I was like, well, we can go explore London. I was exhausted. And I would definitely, if you want to explore London, if you're doing this kind of like hop over to Paris, I would suggest just give yourself an extra day.
Yeah.
It was a lot because you're flying out of LAX, direct flight. I also say this was the day of the big blue screen of death.
That's right.
Fiasco.
That's right. Yes.
This was the night of at like 10 p.m. when all this started happening. We were flying out the next day at 1 or 2 p.m. So I'm looking the whole night, just looking at just everything unravel, and I'm like, there's no way we're making this. And so this is also another, tip to do not fly into your cruise, even though we weren't cruising that day.
Yeah.
Don't fly in the day of your cruise because you never know what's going to happen.
It's so
For
true.
sure.
So, we flew in to London, and then it was exhausting. Just didn't sleep great on the plane, and then we tried to go hit some of the sightseeing touristy things.
How many miles did you walk that day?
That day, I would think it was like 20K.
Oh my gosh!
Like 3 days in a row. Yeah,
that's insane.
and this is also another pro tip for going to Europe. Start getting your steps in before you go on your trip. It's not going to be the same, even if you're used to doing like a few miles a day. Just start ramping up because I was not ready at first. By the end, it was great. I really, because you're exploring a lot more. But yeah, it was a lot.
Yeah, for sure.
And we were even lucky that we had somebody that I was traveling with. Their friend met us in the airport in Heathrow. and they're local, and so they had train tickets for us ready to go. They knew where to take us. They had reservations for this amazing restaurant that was at the top of one of the skyscrapers down by the Thames River. So we were like being directed around, and it was still exhausting and trying to find things, and then and then we had to fly into Paris later that night. So
that's pretty cool.
Yeah, London was awesome. Like, definitely wish we had more time to spend there, but it's great to be able to. I'm glad that we did it, but I wouldn't do it the same way again.
Yeah, for sure. So, when you went to Paris, did you go directly out to Disneyland Paris from the airport?
Yes. So this is another thing to keep in mind. If you're going to go into Disneyland Paris, there is a bullet train that goes directly to the train station that drops you off in their like downtown Disney area. It stops running at a certain point in the evening. And we did not know this, or we thought it was running later than it would have. So we landed in Paris around 9. It was almost 10 by the time we got our luggage, and there was hardly any signage. We couldn't really find anything. And then we looked it up, and it turns out that train wasn't running. And then there is another train that runs later but it actually goes into Paris proper and then over to Disneyland Paris, which is like an hour and a half train.
Yep.
At that point, after this insane travel day, we were not about to try and figure that out. So we just got an Uber.
Oh, okay.
Which was about a half hour, 45 minutes to get there. It wasn't too bad. And we just got dropped off at downtown Disney because we hadn't eaten at that point. So we needed something to eat, and we were also staying not at a Disney hotel, but just one train station away in Val d'Europe. Real quick, like it's like a 2-minute train ride, but it does require the train, which we had the most insane travel day. It was get dropped off at downtown Disney. Parks that closed at that point is after midnight. Only thing open is McDonald's. So we're like, oh, okay, we have to go eat at McDonald's for our dinner, which was, I mean, it was funny because like we're like, oh, we can go get a Royale with cheese, and they have them, and it's even on the wrapper. So that was funny. But,
it's a Pulp Fiction reference, right?
Yeah. And so we ate, and by the time we were done eating, it was almost 1:00. And so we make our way to the train station. Train station is still open, and we walk down. In the ticket terminal still on and accepting, payment. So we bought our tickets. The train's in the station, but we realized there's like nobody here.
Oh man!
And we start walking towards, and there's a conductor walking at us, and then in his kind of broken English, he's like explaining, like, no, the train's not running. And we're trying to like show him that we have tickets, and he's just like shrugging, like, sorry, like nothing we could do. He's like, you can go upstairs and go to the buses. And we knew like there's no shuttle running to our random non-Disney hotel. So we're just like, okay, we'll go up there and get another Uber. And so we go back upstairs. We start to walk. One of my friends is with us, just completely jinxes the whole thing and says, well, can't get much worse than this, right? And we take about 10 more steps, and just the most torrential downpour that I've been in years just comes down on us and just does not stop. So we're ordering the Uber, and watch out, because we didn't think it was going to be a thing out there, but they are doing the Uber scams where they will accept the fare and then the car won't move, and they just sit there and they try and say like, I'm here at the location, and they were not there. And we had to go back and forth with them, and they don't want to cancel the fare because they get dinged on their account. And so we found one little bus stop overhang that we're all 5 of us are just kind of like huddled in with all of our luggage still. It's pouring. Downtown Disney is like basically closed at this point. There's nobody else around. And so we finally canceled that Uber and try and get another one. Nobody picks up for another 10 minutes or so. And now we're starting to freak out because there's no taxis, no anything. What are we going to do? It's not letting up on the rain. And then cancel that again. We get charged a fee for canceling it. Wait a few minutes, try again. And then finally they pick us up, take us to the hotel. At this point, it's 2 or 3 in the morning, and we have to get up by 8 a.m. to meet our friend who is a cast member who was nice enough to sign a few of us into the park. So this is also, the travel day leading into the park. And then we're like, oh, we're going to have a park day, 2 park days. And so it was another, 25,000 steps or something like that for the next 2 days. So
you needed this cruise. Wow.
Yes.
So I think I'd rather do it before the cruise than after the cruise.
Too.
So then you can relax and rest on the cruise. But yeah.
I think that's, good point. It was, the cruise was a great thing to look forward to because it felt like 2 completely different trips, to be honest. Like, you get that kind of like, oh no, the trip's about to end, like when we were on like our last day at the park. But then I was like, wait, our vacation just hasn't even really started yet. This is like bonus.
Yeah, that's true. So what'd you think of Disneyland Paris?
Oh my gosh, beautiful, most beautiful park, definitely. That's a true statement. When people say it, I understand it now. They do a really amazing fantasy land there. I think they have the best small world for sure. It just it seems like it just kind of is like, I don't know, the one in Florida I'm not a huge fan of because you can just like see the walls and you just feel like you're in a warehouse.
Yeah.
It just doesn't feel as good. And then the exterior and the facade and all that. The one in Paris though is like all of the sets and all of the characters just feel like really close to you and kind of surround you. So I really enjoyed that. And then just their Fantasyland is probably twice the size of even, I don't know if twice the size of Disney World's like new Fantasyland expansion, but it's pretty close. And it's just, a lot of water features and landscaping and it's great. So the studios part, not so much.
It feels like they ran out of money.
Oh my gosh. Especially if you're coming from, a fan of going to the U.S. parks,
right?
There's a lot of things that you just don't need to go there because they're almost exactly the same. Tower of Terror is always great to go see. Tower of Terror is normal one as being a California local, but and then their Rock and Roller Coaster, they got rethemed to Marvel. It's a cool little overlay, but it's essentially just Rock and Roller Coaster, right? So
do you think the US should bring that one to Disney? Like, should they upgrade the one at Disney World to be Marvel themed like that?
Yeah, I mean, why not? The Rock and Roller Coaster I feel like is just outdated.
It's a little dated, right?
Yeah.
It would be a strong move.
Yeah,
maybe it'll happen. Maybe.
That I could be okay with. The tower getting switched over to Guardians, I would just I like to have separate things.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah.
give you a reason to go to these places, right? If it's all the same, then it's kind of
gets a little vanilla. Yeah, for sure.
Plus all the construction going on in that park right now, it was just we were done by, I don't know, 1:00 in the afternoon.
Oh, wow.
That was with, that was even with going to see, I think we saw 2 of the 3 of their stage shows.
Okay.
And those were nice. But yeah, and we ate at Remy's.
Oh, nice.
That's a nice restaurant. That's like connected to the ride as the exit platform.
It's so cute.
You like watch everybody eating. So that was interesting. But yeah, nice restaurant.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else good to eat in the parks? I know they're not necessarily known for their food, but did you find anything that you're like, ooh, that was... They need that.
We got lucky. Again, our friend that we knew that was a cast member there, he also worked at Walt's restaurant on Main Street.
Okay.
And so he got us a reservation on our first day, which worked out perfect because when we got there, like I talked about the torrential downpour from the night before, it was still raining a little bit in that morning when we got there. But he got us a reservation for pretty early. And so by the time we just kind of looked at the shops before the reservation, went to have lunch, and by the time we were done, the rain had stopped, so it was perfect.
Oh, very
but
good.
the restaurant was phenomenal. It's it's like Club 33 almost at Disneyland. You can tell that they were pulling heavily from that inspiration over there, or at least the old one before it got renovated. A lot of just like nostalgia, theme park Walt memorabilia up, and like each room is themed to different land. And it's on the second floor on Main Street, and it just so happened that the parade was going by when we were eating there. And since you're on the second floor, and they must instruct these cast members to do this. They're the characters that are up on like a second level of the parade float are almost like eye level with you, so they look directly at you and like point to you and wave. And I think like Captain Hook or somebody like pointed us and like acted like he was eating, because he could see our we were
cool.
at the restaurant.
Nice.
So that was really awesome, and the food was great. I've always heard that, oh, you're gonna go to Disneyland Paris and the food is not gonna be good. So the bar was low.
Yeah.
I was fully expecting, I had heard from some of our friends like, oh, they just eat an Earl sandwich almost every day just because there's just nothing else. And since that was like the first meal, it was sit down restaurant, wasn't expecting too much from the other places, and it wasn't great. Like we ate at essentially their, I think it's like, was it Lady and the Tramp restaurant in Fantasyland? It's like their Italian restaurant.
Like Tony's.
Was not great. It was edible, but it wasn't something like we would have returned to. But it took us a while to even decide on that, because the food was expensive for what it was from what we were seeing, and there just wasn't a lot of great options. So that's what we settled on for dinner that night, and it worked, but nothing to write home about.
Sounds like you won though in general, food wise. I mean, you got Remy and Waltz.
We got real lucky with that. It was great. It was, didn't have to even worry about the reservations. Like I said, he took care of that, so we got really lucky with that for sure.
That's super cool.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else you think people should know about Disneyland Paris?
Definitely go.
For sure.
There's a lot
great,
of
right?
There's a lot of rides that we have over here, but they do a lot different and / better. Their Big Thunder, incredible. You pop up on the other side of that little island, and
you go under the water, right?
Yeah, awesome.
It was closed when we were there, I think, wasn't it?
Oh no.
Yeah, we have to still get back.
Yeah,
still on my list.
Yep.
Yeah. I know it's kind of. Go ahead.
Oh no, that was great. And then I was just gonna say like Phantom Manor and Space Mountain.
Yeah, I love Phantom Manor.
I love that Space Mountain.
And that too, I do too. It's great.
It is.
It is crazy.
Just the way that
I almost
launches
didn't
you.
go on it. Yeah,
Really?
I almost didn't go on it. Yeah, because it has a inversion. It has a loop.
Yeah.
And it's been quite a few years now, but I had suffered for some vertigo for a while.
Yeah.
So the act of spinning isn't always my favorite thing anymore.
Yeah, fair.
But my friends had went on it once, and they were like, "You have to go on it." And it's Star Wars Hyperspace Mountain themed right now, or I guess it's kind of more of a permanent thing right now. And they know that I love Star Wars. And you have to just try and get on this thing. And I will say I'm a bigger guy. It was a little hard to get in and out of the ride vehicle. It's kind of like rock and roller coaster ride vehicle where there's a big, the restraint that comes over your head and kind of locks in place. It's just getting in and out of that. Like you have to, it's kind of deep. So you have to kind of like step into it. And so be aware of that. Yeah. But I was able to get in and out of it, and it was worth it. So
good. That's awesome. I think it's surprising. We even looked for Thanksgiving. It almost is dollar for dollar the same price for us to go to Disneyland as it is to go to Disneyland Paris, including flights. But
oh my gosh,
isn't that crazy? So it is more accessible, I think, than people think. It came down to a time issue for us, so we decided to stay in California. But I do think, if it's on your bucket list, if it's something you want to do, don't count it out, because the news articles are true. It is the same price to go to the U.S. parks as it is to go over there. And you didn't find the language barrier to be a problem, right?
No, not at all. There was not language barrier, but I guess cultural difference. One big thing is ice. If you're used to ice, which I am, I love ice, just ice water, or just give me ice. And they do not give you ice. No. And I swear I walked up to one of my big things that I do when I'm in the parks is I'll just go up to a quick service restaurant and ask for a cup of ice water. They would give you water, but there would never be ice. And so I would ask, and it was like I was asking for uh, you know, something from another planet that they never heard of. And I even had at one point when we were on our in the airport going back to London, went up to a McDonald's, asked for ice water. They gave me water, and I asked, "Oh, can I have ice?" And she like refused me ice because she said it would be too cold. Like, no, 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 you don't need ice. It would be too cold. And I was just like shocked. And I said, "No, no, no, that's fine. I want it as cold as possible." And it just finally she like was like, "Okay," and like gave me ice. But yeah,
That's
so be prepared.
hilarious.
Be prepared for that. And at Disneyland Paris, it happened as well, where I asked, and she had to like go into the back, and it came back with another cast member, and I like said it again, and they were like slowly kind of understood, like, oh, okay, ice water, okay, there you go. And I was like, awesome, thanks so much. And so be prepared for that.
Crazy Americans.
Yeah. Also, the air conditioning situation in Europe is not the best.
Yeah.
And they might say that they have air conditioning. Like one of our hotels said, "Oh, we have AC," but it wasn't really an air conditioner. It was more of like a swamp cooler situation. So it never got too cool, and I had to kind of crack the window. But luckily, when we were there, the weather wasn't too bad. So,
Okay.
but yes, something to keep in mind.
Yeah, definitely. Did your hotel at Disneyland Paris advertise AC and you found out it wasn't that great?
It had better AC than the one in Southampton
Yeah.
near the cruise port.
Okay.
So that was nice. What it did have, and it ended up being a huge plus, and I'd never seen this in a hotel, was like a heat rack.
Oh,
the
yeah.
bathroom.
That's nice.
And because all the things in the bottom of my bag from that night when we got rained on just got soaked because it was just towards the bottom when wheeling it around. So I got to take that stuff out, put it on the rack, and it dried it out. Within an hour or two. So that was great.
Nice.
Cool.
Yeah. Make sure you're bringing plugs that fit both ports. Paris and London do not have the same ports.
And the ship doesn't
And the
have.
ship.
And the ship. The ship, I think, is the standard European one. I forget which one, but they have U.S.
Yeah.
ports.
Yeah.
It's the same thing as the other. If you've been on a Disney cruise, it's the same.
Yeah. It's got a mix.
Yeah. I will say the other thing about Disneyland Paris is if you can see one of their drone shows, do so.
Yeah, that's
Incredible. We had the Main Street Electrical Parade drone show, and it was amazing. Probably the best nighttime show that I've seen. We almost didn't get to see it. We went the first night, and they said that it was like, because of winds that they didn't do it. We think it was a crowd issue, like there just wasn't enough capacity, because the next night we went, there was probably double the amount of people waiting, and they actually did it, and it seemed same weather-wise. So
Interesting.
but they ended up doing it, and then they do a fireworks show afterwards. Their fireworks shows are not as firework heavy, I will say. They're more projections and kind of perimeter, like around the fire, like or around the castle, kind of like bursts.
Right.
So not as spectacular, I guess, as some of the U.S. fireworks shows, but the drone show, phenomenal. And then I will also say this was the craziest thing I think that we saw the whole time, was there's no cast member directing traffic when you're in Main Street for a nighttime show. It's just a free-for-all.
Yeah.
There's no path being like, I am so grateful for the Disneyland Disney World cast members that do this, because it's got to be stressful enough, and I always knew this, but oh my gosh, in Paris it was insane. So because we had seen the fireworks show the night before, we decided, okay, as soon as the drone show ends, and if it looks to be somewhat the same fireworks wise, like there wasn't any extra pyrotechnics happening, let's try and go ahead and duck out early, because we need to get to the train station to get back to our hotel.
Right.
And it is kind of a madhouse, because most people are taking the train to get in and out of there.
Right.
So that train gets pretty packed. So drone show ends, we start to walk away, and there's no real path for us to leave. We're kind of near their hub and need to get, out. So we start just kind of finding our way and snaking through people. And then there's kind of just like this line like that forms of people trying to do the same thing. but I mean, you're really just fishing upstream in a group of people that are trying to watch the fireworks show. And so I understandably get that some people were frustrated with people just trying to like push their way through. And it's a, like I said, long chain of people, like, just, you can't see the end of this. At a certain point, we get to kind of where like the Casey's corner is, like right there. They also have hot dog, Coke corner, same thing. We're about right there, right in the middle of Main Street, and we're kind of cutting up towards the left, and all of a sudden, about not even 10 people in front of us, these one lady that's trying to get out, and then one lady and her family that's like watching the show. All of a sudden, the lady that's watching the show just rears back and punches this other lady in the face. Just, oh my gosh, not what I have ever seen. And I've seen a lot of crazy things in the parks, but this was the craziest. And then to just see the crowd that was already so packed in, just all try and take like a step or two back, which then pushed everybody else back. And then at a certain point, these two ladies just realized there's no getting out of this. This fight is either going to perpetually go on forever, or you're going to have to like calm down and stop. And so, there was only a couple like swings thrown, but they just kind of stopped and then went about their thing. And at that point, the snake of people trying to get through just diverted and tried to go the other way.
Yeah. I mean, what else are you going to do, right?
Yeah. So we're like, we're not going that way. So we ended up getting out and then just getting to like the edge of like the shops, and we're able to like kind of just book it through and get to the end and cut through and made it out. So yeah, so be careful of if you're trying to leave the park and the nighttime show is happening. And it also is a crowd problem because they do their fireworks and the drone show at the very end of the park day. So everybody's going to be leaving at that point when that ends. There's no like extra half hour for you to try and get on rides. It's like, nope, park's closed. Everybody's got to get out.
Everybody's done. Yeah. Interesting. Wow, that's an exciting time.
That is exciting. I hadn't heard that story yet.
Yeah, that was crazy. And that was on the last night, last day. Just like, okay, we're done.
And we're done. That's funny. So, did you all fly from Paris then back to Southampton after that, or how did you get back to where you needed to go?
Yep. So the next day in the morning, we got on the same train line that our hotel was at that connects to Disneyland Paris, but then we just had to transfer in the same station to the bullet train that was actually running this time, thankfully. And that goes straight to Charles de Gaulle in Paris. So that was, I think that bullet train only took like 15-20 minutes. Honestly.
It's fast, right?
Yeah. They said like a half hour, but it was way less than that. I will say pro tip to bring. I didn't have one. Thankfully, one of my friends had one and had an extra one. Little portable fan goes a long way in the airports that don't always have air conditioning, and the trains and all those things. So
that's a good idea.
Those little portable fans came in huge for that portion of the trip. So yeah, we got to Charles de Gaulle, flew back into Heathrow, and then from Heathrow we had a shuttle service. Was buses that picked us up and took us straight to Southampton. And they'd take you to a bus stop that's maybe 10 minutes away from the port. And we were staying at I think it's called an Ibis.
Yep.
It's kind of like a budget hotel.
Yep.
And they have another one that's like right next to it. And that's about a 5 or 10 minute walk to the port. And so we just stayed there. We got there one night early, and then the cruise was the next day.
Okay. All right.
And then another thing for about getting to the port, if you're staying at one of those hotels, is it's a doable walk, but the concrete and the ground is not all very well paved.
Yeah.
So it was kind of, if you have a lot of luggage, it might be, and kids and all that, it might be a lot to get there. And we tried to get an Uber from our hotel, and there was just nobody picking up at all. So, I mean, you might be able to call a taxi service and have better luck, but yeah, we don't know if it was because it was, considered such a short distance that maybe they weren't, wanting to pick that fare up, but you couldn't even see like any cars. You pull up the map in Uber and you'll see like drivers are around like driving around that you potentially could have, I think there was only one, and it was a good half hour away. So
No.
be aware of that. Maybe try and book a taxi in advance just so your peace of mind don't have to worry about it. Or if you're up for the walk, it's doable. So
Good to know. So tell us about your cruise. You were on the Dream.
Yep, it was on the Dream this time. This is my second time on the Dream. I've been on the Fantasy and the Wonder. Besides that, so I just haven't been on the Wish and the Magic.
Yeah, and soon to be Treasure and Destiny, but you'll get there. I'm confident.
Yeah, we'll get there eventually. Yep. Yeah. So this was the Dream. So it's one of the bigger ships, and it was great. I will say also onboarding. Any other cruise that I've been with a group of people, if you have a different boarding group or time, they've always let us just whoever has the earliest time, let us go in
all
with them
together. Yeah.
This time they were very adamant and they did not let that happen. We had to stick to our groups. I don't know if it's because the cruise terminal for seating just doesn't accommodate and hold as many people, but yeah, they made us stick to our boarding groups. So that was a little unfortunate. So be aware of that. First day, not a whole lot getting, normal first day activities.
Cabanas.
Get some cabanas. Yeah, get some lunch. I think we went to a sit-down restaurant for the first day, which would have been Enchanted Garden, I think. But food was great. We had a sea day, and then the first port after that was Norway. And
okay.
I'll butcher the names. You can look up the ports if you want. But yeah, first port was Norway, and beautiful little Norwegian city. Just these little white houses, like all packed together up, like going up a little slope, and it's so the difference I would say because we went on same group of us went on the Alaska cruise last year on the Wonder, and that was a fantastic trip. Their Alaska ports are very small, I would say.
Yeah.
Like when you're going into these European ports, it's an actual like city that sure they rely on tourism, but it's definitely, you can tell like people are living here, whereas Alaska, you pull in and you're like, oh, there's a house on the side of the mountain, and then there's nothing for a while. But when you're going through Norway, you just see people like, oh, this is like a little farm that they've had for years. Like how many hundreds of years have this family owned this house, right? And just like over and over and over again. And yeah, just beautiful little cities to go walk around in and explore, and shops, and yeah, it was I think this was also the port where there is a three kingdoms of Norway or something like that, where they put like these giant bronze swords into the ground, and that was only like a 10 or 15 minute Uber ride away. So that's something I would suggest if you get to there.
Did you guys mostly just do your own thing, or were you on any excursions for that?
For us, so there was a couple that was with us that did have, I think, a Disney excursion for most of the port days.
Okay.
So they went off and kind of did their own thing. And then for us, we just kind of did our own exploring. Didn't really have any solid, pre-booked Disney cruises. We just figured we could do most of these things on our own. So
yeah, it seemed like there was things pretty accessible from the port, from your pictures and stories.
Yeah, you could get around. Like I said, it's big walking. Like you could walk to all these little places, like and have a full day's worth of things to do. Walk further down into like the port, and there was like a maritime museum right there, and you could tell. So I think on this day that we got there, this would have been like a Thursday or a Friday. I think it was a Friday, and you could tell that there was locals that were coming in from surrounding areas or from wider out in the city to come actually like hang out there and like go to the restaurants, and so that was cool too to see. This is just like an actual city and not just a tourist trap, right? So the chocolates in Norway are delicious. go like there. Like, we stopped into a 7-Eleven, and I just asked the guy like, "What are the like local favorite chocolates?" And like pointed some out, and I just grabbed a bunch of different ones.
That's
and,
cool.
That's fun.
Yeah, so-
That's a great idea,
Yeah.
by the way. I like that.
Like 7-Eleven, like it's funny, but like you're gonna probably get a fairly authentic, like as opposed to some very manipulated and crafted, answer. Like I'm sure he probably sees all the
I
candy
love
that
that.
people get.
Yeah, that was a great, like, just that's a big one. Just ask the locals, like they're, especially the people that are working there, they're gonna know what people are buying, and if they live there, so they know what's the good stuff. So did that, and like you said, there's like definitely more overpriced and touristy marketed candies like in all of these places. But you go into a 7-Eleven, it's just like what we would see like a Snickers bar, and then also seeing like their our brands that we have here, but they have over there, and the differences. Back to like when we ate at McDonald's, their McDonald's was definitely much better, like because they're required to use better and quality ingredients and not as much artificial crap. So it's definitely worth checking out some of those. Like if you're like curious, like I wonder what it's like out here. So
that's cool.
They're big on, I think actually most of their drinks, I think if you like go and order from a kiosk, their default is like their zero version of like Coke Zero, Fanta Zero. They're really big on Fanta Zero, so much so that even on the cruise at the self-serve soda machines up top, they replaced one of the drinks that normally is on the cruise, but with Fanta Zero, which I had never seen before.
That sounds delicious.
Oh yeah, it was
I'm
awesome.
all in.
Yes, that's cool.
Orange Fanta or a different flavor, like classic orange. Okay.
Yep, I was gonna say that I was surprised they have a number of different flavor Fanta Zeros, so that was also like just trying those out, like going by the stores and all that stuff. So
that's fun. Super cool.
Yeah, so that was the first port. Second port was Olden, which is basically like their fjords port. Beautiful. Oh my gosh, so gorgeous. This reminded me a lot of Alaska.
So that's kind of what I want to know. That like, how do the fjords in Norway differ from Alaska?
So the ones that we went to in Olden, I would say it's not as, the mountains aren't surrounding you as much as when you're going through the Alaska fjords. It's a good trek to get when they actually go to like the glacier when you're on the Alaska cruise, and you're like a good hour and a half, 2 hours of these really tight passages going through to try and get there. These were a little more open, I would say, and not as many small waterfalls coming off the cliffs like Alaska. They are there, but I remember just in Alaska they were everywhere, like every few feet it seemed like. But they both had their pros and cons to that. It's like it was more wide open, so you could see more. So it was just more like of a wide, breathtaking shot instead of just kind of engulfing over you type thing. And then just like no real cities or civilization, and you just kind of like turn this corner, and all of a sudden there's just this little town that's maybe 100, 200 houses or something like that, and the cruise port, and you just pull right in there, and there, you can see off in the distance is like you could almost see one of the glaciers, and then around the corner is like the way towards the actual like excursion place where they take you to go see the glaciers. So, but what we did at this port, which was incredible, and I highly recommend this, is they have a skyloft or gondola that goes
cool,
I want to say almost vertical up this mountain to get to, it's like the mountain across from where the cruise port is, and the views are just insane. It overlooks, so you can see the ship, and it looks tiny because you're so far up, and then on the other side you have a view of the glacier, and you can, since you're so high up and over, you can kind of see that. Is a little pricey. I think it came out to about $80 something a person, but like I said, it was so worth it.
Sounds amazing.
Yeah, and that also included you bought the ticket like just at the cruise port, there was a little kiosk and paid for it there. And they had a bus that took you over. It's about a 5-minute bus ride. Wasn't very far at all. And you go up the gondola. There's a little cafe up there and trails to hike if you want to. And it was great. One thing that we ran into with that was it got cloudy. And so you have to just kind of wait. So if it's cloudy when you go up there, just wait it out, because we just kind of hung out, waited, maybe 20 minutes or so. And you'd have gaps where like be ready if you want to like, take your pictures, because all of a sudden the clouds would like clear, and then within a couple minutes it would come back. And so you had like little time windows to get your views and take your pictures. But then we had some pockets of a little bit more time. So just absolutely stunning, beautiful. And then leaving that port, like just the cruise out, just sunset and everything, and just it was amazing. So yeah, I think that was probably one of my favorite ports that we had.
That sounds cool
for sure, just because of that little adventure. So
yeah, sounds cool.
And then also when we pulled away from that port, it's like you could tell that town, it's a big deal. Especially, I think this was also the first time. I know for sure it was the first time the Dream has been in a bunch of these ports, but I think it's also the first time one of the bigger Disney ships has been there. So they're used to the Wonder or the Magic being up there, I guess. And so when we were sailing away, I would say not everybody, but like there was quite a few people that you could see outside of their houses
just
waving.
Watching. That's cool.
Watching and waving. And at the bar that's like right there at the port, the people that either work there or maybe they're locals all came out, and they had flags and they were waving the flags.
Oh, neat.
It was really cool. So you could tell like it was a big deal for them, for these cruise ships to come in there. So
cool. That's fun. I like that.
Yeah. And then we had one more port in Norway. And this was again another beautiful, just little port, European town, very easily walkable, cobblestone streets, and no excursion. They also had something similar to like a gondola that kind of went up towards like the top of the mountain. We didn't go do that. This one we were just kind of all like split up on our own, just kind of explored the city, went through some shops, and just wandered around, went to some of the parks, and they have like a little stream that like kind of cuts through the middle of the city, and there's people on little kayaks and boats, and so it was beautiful, and just went and did some shopping. And again, this is where I found like went into like the touristy shops, and they had Norwegian chocolate, but it was like you could tell it just looked too like, I don't know,
too fancy.
I don't know. Yeah, not even too fancy. Just like you could tell it was just marketed straight for the tourists. Like, here's this Norwegian chocolate. So like I literally went out of my way and like looked up, okay, where is the 7-Eleven again? Because I need more of those chocolates that we got, because we were running out of them. That's like, I was supposed to bring some of these home. We're already almost out of these, so we gotta go pick these up, because it was the last port for Norway. So found one, walked over there, and sure enough, there they were. There's these chocolates. I can't remember the name off the top of my head. It's like a yellow and blue wrapper, and they have a bunch of different flavors, but they were fantastic. And then of course picked up a nice Fanta Zero, different flavor, and made my way back to the ship.
So the big tip for Norway is 7-Eleven. Everybody write that
down. That's what I'm getting.
Yeah. There was a supermarket that I went to that was kind of interesting. It was a Sunday, so a lot of things were shut down, unfortunately. A lot of the shops were. And even that, like, it was like half of the like supermarket was closed down, and they just had one section open that just had like mainly their food things, but like they had a gardening section that, all these like extra things that just weren't open. But I kind of poked my head in there, and I think I got one thing. But you could tell, like, since it was one of the only things open, there was kind of a line of people trying to get stuff. So, but it went fast. And everything, I would say, don't worry about bringing cash for the ports. Everything that we encountered was all card, tap with your phone.
Yeah.
So that was fantastic. There wasn't one time when I really needed cash. I will say, as a tip for if you want to make sure that the people on the cruise line are getting their tips, bring cash. Those cash tips are always preferred for them. because a lot of them end up splitting tips in different ways, and you're not even aware of it, of like how that whole situation works. So if you're really adamant about like, I really like this person, the server, whoever it might be, cash tip goes the longest way, and you know that they get to keep it. Otherwise, they might have to split it and all that stuff, like I said. So
That's good to know.
And I know that that's like it was a weird thing because you got a lot of Europeans on that cruise and they're not accustomed to tipping.
Right.
There is a gratuity, like if you're ordering drinks on the ship, that you get the automatic 18%, and then you can tip on top of that. So the cast members, when they're on the European cruises, from what I've heard and talking to some of them, it's like they don't make as much on those European cruises because it's not a big tipping culture. So
it's good to know.
It's a good tip.
Yeah.
Dave. Did you see any Northern Lights?
We didn't. So there was one night. Well, I looked every night. I'm a night guy, so and we also had a veranda, which was great. So I went out there every night and was looking. And you know, you are so far north that you do have that kind of weird perpetual, like, doesn't quite get completely dark every night. It's just like sun sets, and then you have like one spot in the sky that just kind of stays a little bit light, and then it just gets, you know, the sun comes up again. We had one night where the captain came on and said that there was a Northern Lights watch, like, you know, look out for them this night. But unfortunately, we never got it. So that would have been amazing. We were really hoping for it, but we weren't in the right season from what we looked up.
And did you see him in Alaska?
We did not either. Yeah.
Okay.
We did not see them there.
You got to book another cruise for the summer.
Yeah. Just strictly for the Northern Lights.
Yeah.
I think so. Our cruise was end of July, like July 19th to August 5th. And I think the actual like start of that season is more towards September.
Yeah.
And then that was Norway. That was awesome. And then we made our way over to Iceland. And then, so that was the roughest seas that I've probably been in on a Disney cruise. And there was quite a few people that were seasick on the way over there.
And you said that's pretty, like, they warned you that was normal, or?
Yeah. For the way out there, just because you're kind of getting away. The first part of that cruise, you're just near land the whole time. Like when you go into Norway, you're going underneath London, and, you know, so you're kind of landlocked and pretty protected from a lot of those elements. But going out towards Iceland, we were also like fighting the current, and it was rough.
You're
like,
running right in. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and even like cast members that are, you know, used to being on the ship were like looking rough. Yeah.
Struggling.
Yeah.
How long is that passing? Like how many days?
That was I believe it was 2 days at sea to get to Iceland. Yeah. So make sure you're taking your seasick pills, or you wear your wristbands,
or both.
Patch, or all of them, all the above. I knew people. Yeah, we had people in our group that had taken everything that normally keeps them okay, and were just out, like they were done.
That's too bad.
Yeah. So, and I was also afraid because then we were getting to Iceland, and our big thing that we were going to do is rent cars to go on what's called the Golden Circle Tour in Iceland, which is about 6 hours or longer of just driving around to all these big natural sightseeing places to see, like geysers and waterfalls and all these. So I'm like, oh man, they're seasick, and then we're about to go get in cars. Are they going to be okay? They were fine. But, so we landed in Reykjavik, which is the capital of Iceland, and this was very interesting as well. Never had this happen on a cruise, and it seems like from what I looked up, this doesn't happen a whole lot. Is we actually had the ship stays overnight at this port.
Oh, okay.
So we got there, and instead of having like all aboard and, you know, you take off at the end of the afternoon, it just stays there, and so you can get on and off the ship for at whatever time of day or morning or night you want to until the following day.
That's cool.
So that really frees up like what you can do for that first day. There's no rush to like, oh gosh, we got to get back. So, and it also just was like a no-brainer to like, okay, well, let's rent cars. So like I said, there was 10 of us. 2 of them went on the actual Disney excursion, which did the exact same thing we did, but they were just Disney buses.
And probably more expensive.
Oh yeah. Talking to them, they like wish that they they did have a couple extra things, like they had a lunch provided at one of these
Yeah.
spots that was like fully, catered buffet and nice. And I think they actually went to maybe one other stop, but we went to a different stop than we went to. I don't know if they went to. I don't think they went to this big, massive crater that we went to. But that was really cool. We just kind of did that at the very end. But yeah, we rented 2 cars. Very easy process. We just took an Uber from the port over to, I think it was a Hertz rental car place, and then just standard rental car procedures. And I think it was only about $200 per car I think we just
That's
got
pretty.
like
That's a great
24-hour
deal.
rental.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And split between 4 people in the car. It was nothing compared to the Disney excursion was probably like 200 something bucks a person, if not more. And so we got our cars, picked everybody up, and went on our way. And it was just, Iceland is the whole trip so beautiful. Like everything is just amazing. And but Iceland had just its own beauty and unto itself. It's just like, and it's so fascinating to be able to drive. Sure, you're driving for these multiple hours, but you're not going that far in between these just spectacular sites that are just, nobody's hardly even at these spots.
Yeah.
And you just show up and there's just waterfalls and hills. And we went to the tectonic plates where North America and Europe plates are pulling apart, and you can just like see
That's
the
crazy.
massive formations and like pulling apart. And you can, it's like they're right next to you. Like you just walk like 100 feet apart and like touch North America's plate and then touch Europe's plate. And at that spot in particular, I don't know what it was with this, but beware of this if you go there. They had the worst fly problem.
Oh, weird.
And they were different types of flies than what we're used to, like that we have in America. They were like smaller, almost like a big gnat almost.
Yeah.
And they would just swarm you as soon as you got out of the car. And they were all around this area for some reason. No other part of Iceland did we have this, but they were just, it was so annoying, like almost to the point where I didn't almost want to get out of the car to go see the, like further into like where you walk this little path to get up into like see the tectonic plates. But I thankfully just, powered through and tried to keep swatting them away. But it was very interesting that like it was so bad there, and only there. But yeah, it was that was the first stop, and then we went to like a little smaller waterfall, and then you go up to a geyser, and it's kind of on every 15 minutes, kind of like Old Faithful.
That's crazy.
Erupted, and so we stuck around for that, and then we got lucky, and there was a Disney crew, like one of the official excursions was coming in right as we were leaving, so we missed a big giant group of people that were coming in for that. And then we went up to, I think it's called Gullfall Falls, which is, I think it's the largest waterfall in Europe, and it's incredible. You walk up and just, I've never been to Niagara Falls, but it's just this massive waterfall that kind of is down in this little like there's like a big plateau on one side, and then it's kind of nestled down inside of that, and you can walk right up to the waterfall, and you're going to get soaked if you go do this, but you're like right up there next to it, and that was just amazing. And then we went over and drove through to the crater, and that was formed by, at first we all thought like, oh, it was like asteroid or something, comet, but it was actually from a geyser that erupted and spewed all the earth all over the place.
Wow.
And when it did that, it was this like red like soil, or almost like a clay, but not really clay, but it just made all of the surrounding dirt just like this really like almost like Mars red look, within like water in the bottom of the basin, and then green with green growing all around it. So you just have those like really, really vibrant colors all around. And I think that one they did charge like a few dollars, but it wasn't much. There's just somebody at a stand like taking payments. But that was really cool. And I was the one that was driving one of the cars, and I'll say it was one of the best drives I've just like a country
It's
back
not hard.
road drive. Yeah, not a hard drive. Very relaxing and just beautiful everywhere. Like you're just driving down for in between each one of these places probably a good hour or so, depending on like which spot you're going to. And there's horses all over the place, and it was just spectacular. Like I would do that drive. It was, and people, my friends, they were like, "Oh, you want to switch out? Like we can drive if you don't want it." I was like, "Nope, I'm good. Like it's great." Not that many cars on the road.
Yeah.
So Iceland was fantastic.
That's cool.
And there's the whole thing where it's like Iceland is green and Greenland is ice.
Yeah.
So.
And I'd say, yeah, that's pretty accurate. It was very green. Yeah, just tons of farmland and just undeveloped area, which, I'm in Southern California, so that's all a big, not surprised, but a welcome change of pace.
Yeah, for sure.
And we didn't see no puffins. We didn't see any puffins, unfortunately. And then at that point, we kind of made it back. I think we ended up being out on the road about 6 or 8 hours for that. So it was a long day.
But dinner was waiting.
Dinner. Oh, so this was okay. Yeah, this was an interesting thing because they knew so many people were out doing this. This is like the thing to do in Iceland.
Okay.
Is that Golden Circle tour, and I don't think the official Disney excursions got back until pretty late as well. I think when we got back, we went and stopped at somewhere outside of the ship to get dinner because we knew that we missed our dinner time. We had late dinner seating. We didn't make it back, but we did hear because somebody that we knew was on the ship still that they pushed back and opened up some of the restaurants for later in the evening because they knew people were coming back so late. So that was nice, but we didn't know that until after we.
Yeah, that's unfortunate.
Yeah. Oh, and I will say this was also getting on and off the ship in Iceland was interesting because the ramps off the port onto the dock or from the ship to the dock were at an extremely high angle. Like you had to you were like going up one of the biggest inclines or down one of the biggest inclines I'd seen. I think I saw them trying to get a wheelchair off, and it took there was 2 people to make sure that they could hold this thing coming back. And it was quite the sight to see people trying to struggle up these ramps. So be aware of that if you're on one of these ports that are like that.
Must be because they're not used to the big ship or something, and maybe it wasn't designed for that.
Yeah, maybe, or the tides and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, and I think at one point they had opened up one of those lower level ports just to try and help alleviate that. Yeah. But getting back on the ship, the security for some reason just took forever. So we had our rental cars. This port did not have an auxiliary parking lot to have people park and stay at the port because it was kind of an industrial port. And there was a parking lot kind of off to the side, very small, probably had maybe 15, 20 parking spots. And by the time we got over there, we had 2 cars. There was 1 spot left, so one of our cars got it, and then there was no other spots. And we were like, well, what are we going to do? We don't know what to do. And then there was this car that was sitting there that we ended up, they had you could tell they were in their car with the lights on. And one of my friends was just we were sitting there for about 10 minutes, no cars leaving, nothing. He finally was like, I'm going to go ask them what if they're leaving or what's the deal. And so he goes up and he asks these people hey, are you guys going to leave? And I guess he goes up to the car, and they're not from the cruise. And this port is nowhere near anything that somebody would just it's not like a port with shops around it or anything. How these people ended up at this little parking lot was blew our mind. And I guess they were just in a full-on argument, it was a couple
trying to have some quiet space.
Yeah, so we were just so he's we're trying to get the spot, explains to them what's going on, and then comes back to the car and tells us all this stuff. And they told him, they're like, oh yeah, we're gonna leave in about 10 minutes or so. And we're like, okay, well, we'll just wait then, I guess. And so we're just trying to figure out what is happening in this car this whole time. At this point, it's probably after 10. It's probably 10 something, and we're waiting. More cars are pulling into the slot, trying to figure out where they're gonna park their cars. And finally, this couple leaves, and we get a parking spot, and we walk back. and this was the coldest night for sure out of the whole trip. And we're walking back to the cruise ship. It was probably like maybe like a 15-minute walk, and it was cold. That was, I'm just in shorts and a hoodie, like typical Southern California guy, right? It wasn't like, oh my God, I was dying, but I could feel it that night for sure. So weather-wise, we got pretty lucky. Nice and cool. And I think also this kind of the itinerary and time of year might have made it so it wasn't as attractive to some people for a summer vacation, because a lot of people want a summer vacation, they want to go to the beach and somewhere hot. And this is, Europe and the northern countries of Europe. All these people from Europe want something warm and not cold. So I think that deterred some people from, taking this as their summer vacation, which then also led into, this was the fewest amount of kids that I've seen on a Disney cruise line out of all the cruises that I've taken. It was, even on the other cruises, it's not that big a deal. I don't have kids. The group that we were traveling with, no one had kids. And so when, we're in the adult sections, it's never really an issue really to, have kids all over the place or feel like we're just being overwhelmed by them. But you could really tell on this cruise, they weren't around. And it wasn't just that they were out in the kids club. It was a different demographic of people. I know part of that's probably also price point of this cruise, very expensive cruise, especially even in like compared to the Alaska cruise, because it's so long, 12, 13 night cruise. The Alaska cruise is just 7 nights. So that could have definitely changed the dynamics there, but it was noticeable for sure.
But a good trip.
Oh my gosh, the best. Definitely the best cruise that I had been on for sure. Alaska was also amazing. It's up there. Again, I don't know if this is just because, duration, when you're on the ship for that long, you really kind of get in that comfort zone of like, it's almost 2 weeks, right? So you have that like first week, and you're like, oh man, the trip's going to end. You're like, wait, no, there's like another 6 days. Like, we're like, halfway through. This is great.
You get really settled in, huh?
Yeah. And that's my big pro tip that I was told my very first cruise. And I haven't done it. I think the shortest I've done is a 5-night, 7 night, 7 night, 12, 13 night. But
you're doing it right, Robbie.
Thank you. Yes. I've had some great people to guide me on these journeys of what to do and how to do it. But I was told, very first cruise, unpack all your stuff the first night if you're there for 5 nights or longer, so you feel like you're not living out of a bag. And
for sure,
that goes a really long way. So
that's my first thing always.
Yeah, it is. It's true.
I love it. It's the best feeling. Like, I am in this room. This is mine.
Yeah, she stakes her claim real quick.
I do. I love it so much. So.
I agree. It's like when we went on the Alaska cruise last year, my friend that I was sharing a room with, I did that right away, and he was kind of iffy about it, and I was like, I'm telling you, this is where it's at. Get it all out. Put your bags under the bed, and you don't have to see them, and it's great. Yeah, so I highly recommend that as well.
Awesome.
And for such a long cruise, I think everybody that we were with at one point ended up doing laundry on board the ship.
Sure, makes sense.
Yeah. A couple of our friends that went, like, they were hardcore and did not pack a check-in bag, and only did a carry-on and a backpack.
That's impressive.
Fully knowing that they were just going to have to do laundry maybe, at least once, if not twice.
Yeah.
I don't know how they did that, but
Dave's shaking his head. He's
for 12 days plus the other days, really it was 2 weeks. Like that's a long time to not
exactly
to not pack more than that. I don't know.
And just even like, what if you had like found something like souvenir wise you wanted to bring back or something like that? I don't know.
That's cool.
But I mean, it's doable, I guess. Again, they had no kids, and so that helps a lot for that in that situation. But
it can be done.
It can be done. And then we were supposed to get another port in Iceland, but unfortunately, they had to cancel that because I guess the port was still under construction, and when they plan all these out so far in advance, they were quoted that the construction work would be done and they'd be able to dock in the port, but that wasn't the case, so they had to before the cruise started by a few weeks. We got notified that port was canceled, but they did end up getting us into Liverpool.
Oh, that's cool.
Instead, so
That's cool.
It was way better than just having another sea day, right? So,
oh, for sure. Yeah.
And coming back wasn't as rough, right?
Correct. There was a little bit of motion, but nowhere near like it was going out. So that helped a lot. And then we went to Liverpool. Again, another just uniquely beautiful and different city. Just because it's England and it's an actual city that's built up, but it is it's one of their older ports with that's been there for hundreds of years, and they have still some of the old port infrastructure kind of set up as like a historical monument.
Oh, neat.
There's 3 or 4 museums like right off the dock of the port, and all of the museums in England are free if they're run by the government and the country. So there's like a music museum, I think a maritime museum. There's a Beatles experience museum that is privately owned, but that's I went and checked that out. It was okay. There wasn't as much memorabilia that I was expecting for a museum. It was just kind of more of like a audio walking tour of kind of the history of the Beatles.
Yeah.
And it was cool and interesting. It's like the home of the Beatles and all. There's a giant statue of the Beatles like right there in the port, and everybody's lined up to take pictures with that all day.
For sure.
It was also an interesting day for us to get there because it was the day that the protests were happening for the stabbings that had happened.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And so they were right there in the port, like when we docked. I got off of the port a little bit later in the afternoon, so I guess they had moved and marched the protests further away. But when we first got there, they had a police line just set up directly to like protect the port, like the cruise port.
Wow.
And keep them away from it. So that was really interesting to see. And they were all like in their little town center by one of these statues.
That's alarming.
So they all slowly moved away. Nothing from what I saw on the news like crazy had happened, but it was another interesting thing to happen on that trip. So but once they all moved and everything was kind of back to normal, and lots to do in that little city and their port. Tons of shops and restaurants, and again another place where you could tell there's a lot of locals here just coming out to hang out. And actually this is what they do, right? So that's I like that, to see like, okay, you're getting a feel for what it's actually
it's
like.
something more authentic as opposed to manufactured,
right? And then that was the last port, and then we had another sea day, and then back to Southampton. And
sad day. Getting off the boat.
Yep, getting off the boat. It's a real sad day, especially after so long. You're just like, oh, geez. And you get a little bit of that, like, oh, it'll be nice to go back home.
Yeah, yeah.
So.
Well, very cool. I really appreciate you like taking time to tell us all about the. I mean, I've already Googled like what are we sailing next year now. So, it's good to know, and such a different experience, right, than going to Castaway, and just unique.
Yeah,
so
beach places.
I think it's awesome to hear about, and awesome to know what's out there, and just some unique experiences. I think that's very cool. Good to set new dreams. Now I've got new dreams.
There you go.
Look out, Dave.
On the dream. Maybe
on the dream. Maybe even on the dream.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very different than a lot of the other cruises that people usually talk about, or that we've gone on for sure. So that's cool.
I would say there was a couple unique things because of such a long cruise. Like, you got a lot of double ups on the restaurants. So I think we ate at Enchanted Garden like 4 times. Animators, like, and I think all the other ones were like 3 times.
Yeah.
And they kept the menu. The food was actually, really good. The big hits for a lot of our group were the soups, to be honest.
Yeah.
They had some really killer soups. throughout the different days, and the lunches at like if you go to the sit down restaurants for some lunches, they change out the menu, and there was some items on there that were really fantastic. They had like a kimchi burger one day. There was a meatloaf that they had one day that I didn't go to, but everybody in our group said like they just couldn't stop talking about that the rest of the trip. I was like, wow, I really missed out on some meatloaf, I guess.
Who would have guessed?
Yeah. And then the stage shows, phenomenal. Beauty and the Beast stage show on that ship was incredible. It was so good that I almost, since we had the late dinner, we saw the show, the first seating.
Yeah.
It was so good that I seriously contemplated just skipping dinner to see it again.
Wow.
Okay. Yeah. Yes. It was, and they even had 2 members of the cast were from Broadway guest performing.
Guest performing. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That was fantastic. They had some other singers and magicians, and they did I think it's Believe on that ship.
Yep.
It's like the father-daughter story.
Yeah, it's cute.
Yeah. And then Golden Mickey's similar, the normal shows from there. So I mean, if you've seen those, not necessarily like a must do, but they're good. Like I hadn't seen the Golden Mickeys I think in a couple cruises.
Yeah, so they're fun.
It's good to see it. Yeah. And then we also got really lucky, and there was like buzz the whole time because when we were on this trip is when Wolverine and Deadpool came out.
Yeah.
Oh.
And everybody was curious, like, are they going to show it on the ship? Are they going to show it on the ship? And there was some people saying nope, and some people saying yes. That like they're like, no, it's a rated R movie. There's no way they're going to play it. And a couple days before, when we got on the ship, they announced that they were going to play it midnight release, whole thing, night of everybody else. They just had cast members stationed at the Walt Disney Theater checking if you were checking your stateroom keys.
Okay.
And so that way
that's a good way to do it.
Yeah, because if you're supervised, they will you can go in, you can bring your kids if you wanted to go see Deadpool, I guess. But just to like the roaming gangs of teenagers that we call them that are on every Disney Cruise Line ship that like click up and hang out till all hours of the evening. They were on this ship too, so they were making sure that they did not come in and see Wolverine and Deadpool.
That makes sense.
But, yeah. That was awesome though to see it on the ship.
For sure.
Big group of Disney people watching that was hilarious. So
that's pretty cool that they made that happen. That's kind of some magic.
Yeah, we were surprised because the rated R thing and all that. So
yeah.
And then a lot of bingo. Played a lot. Didn't win this time. I will say, in Alaska, maybe Alaska's they're the lucky ticket here, but when in Alaska we won big on bingo.
Yeah, you did.
We our group won the big final day jackpot. One of the girls in our group won. It was like $6,000 or something insane, and didn't have to split it with anybody because nobody else got bingo. And then they play like 3 or 4 games per session of bingo. And in that same final session, I won one of the first couple games. And also won it, so nobody else got it, and I think that was like $600. So we made our money back on bingo, like to pay for future bingos for quite a while.
That's awesome.
But this time not so much. We got one number away a few times, but there was I will say there wasn't, since it's such a long cruise, the daytime activities kind of start to get a little repetitive.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But yeah, so we won trivia twice. That was cool. So you get a little medal if you win bingo. Or not bingo, sorry, trivia.
Yep.
Those got really crowded because, like I said again, more adults than kids on this ship, and just not as much to do. They did have a former Disney World, I guess even more than Disney World, but he started as a Disney World cast member when Disney World opened, and he was doing seminars every day about like his experience as a cast member.
That's cute.
Throughout different, so it was almost like a convention.
Cool.
Yeah, it was like a convention history, like, and I'm all about that type of stuff. So it was really interesting to hear his stories about getting Magic Kingdom like ready to go for their opening day, and then he got moved over to Epcot and how that was, and then he got moved over and had to help set up Disneyland Paris, and like so that all tied in. I was like, I was just at Disneyland Paris, I definitely want to go check out his talk there. And then he got moved over to Tokyo, or one of the Asia parks. So yeah, quite a lot to talk about, and like he was a Jungle Cruise skipper, and so that was a nice little touch.
I would have gone to that. That sounds interesting.
And it was multiple days too. So he did like one park per day across multiple days. Just because he had the time to. So he was fun to listen to. And just, something different to do.
Sure.
And that was, covers most of it. And then just a bus ride back to the airport, same shuttle service, return back, and then back to LAX.
Sad
return day.
Home.
Yeah, long flight. That's a long flight. That was the longest flight that I had taken. So it was
a ways.
It was good to get back. I will say also, unfortunately, we did get sick on the return. A couple of our people had gotten colds earlier in the cruise and then gotten better, and then at the end, it started kind of coming around, like, or a different strain of something came around. It did turn out to be that, we did get a couple people tested positive for COVID when we got home, so that was unfortunate. I got sick as well, but you're traveling and all that stuff. It wasn't, and it's been surging, so it wasn't a huge shock, and you kind of, we're all aware of that risk when we went, but was something to be aware of, that you can get sick on the way back, or while you're out there. So
better on the way back than on the way there.
Yeah, true. But that was not the best way to end it, I guess, in the trip, but part of the deal.
Well, we can't end our podcast on that sad note. So we, on this podcast, I don't know if you know this, we have been sharing kind of a magical moment from the week, just as a way to be like, I don't know, kind of honor like how lucky we are to do so many of these things. And like, life can't always be about travel. Sometimes the magic has to be at home. And so we've been trying to, like, I guess, be grateful for the magic moments in our life during the week. Are you willing to participate in a magical moment with us?
Absolutely. And I am very well. I've been keeping up with the podcast. It's been great so far.
Oh,
great job. Yeah.
Awesome. Do you want to go first or you want to go last? You can decide.
I'll let you guys go. I've been talking for a while, so
okay.
All right. People are probably sick of me.
Do you want to go first or you want to?
I'll let you go.
All right.
Ladies
well,
first.
my magical moment happened today. So we actually went to a cultural event at our school system. They did a carnival, Latin American cultural event where it's food and games and dancing and mariachi band and, just a fun thing to do and be out with the kids. I've been trying to work really hard at getting the kids out during the weekend and not all weekend because that's exhausting, but finding a fun event to do. And this really fit the bill for everybody. It was fun. Everybody had a churro, which is sort of, I guess, kitschy, but nonetheless, they were happy, and some great tacos. We tried some different things, and kids played games, lots of community involvement, and lots of kids dressed up in their traditional garb, which was always really fun. So that's mine.
That does sound magical.
It was magical. It was great. Nice. It was a great day.
It's a little silly, but it's kind of funny. But and so I'll call it magical because it was accidental, and so but still magical. My birthday happened over a week ago, and my boss took us out to lunch on my birthday, and he didn't even know. So that was magical.
It was magical. That's awesome.
Did you say it when you were there?
Nope.
He did not.
I didn't tell him. To this day, they don't even know. Nobody knows.
Wow.
What's yours, Robbie?
So mine has just been kind of ever since this, tie back into the trip has been because of all that walking from this trip. As soon as I got back, I just have had this itch to just keep walking, and it's just been fantastic for me. So I've just been every night, just, go out, go for a walk, and been, listen to your podcast, which like I mentioned to you guys, like really reminds me of back in the day when I used to do that with nostalgia. And it's just been, I just feel so much better. It's just, really improved a lot for me. And I just really kind of tie it back to that whole trip and just the experience and just kind of moving off that momentum and motivation of just, getting out there and doing
things,
more activity and just feeling better. So really,
that's awesome.
I
We're
love
excited
that.
for you. That's really cool.
That's fun.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been and also to just kind of be ready for the next one, right?
Yeah, that's right.
It's true.
don't
Yep.
don't have these moments of like going to Disneyland Paris and just dying at the end of the night because you're just. I mean, you're gonna at 20,000 steps.
You're going to be tired no matter what. Yeah.
Yeah. But just a little bit more prepared. So, and we've been talking about like that same group from work is like, oh, maybe the Mediterranean next year or something.
Ooh.
Something different. Because we, this group has been really awesome to travel with. We're all coworkers, but we don't necessarily all work together or closely like on a day-to-day basis. They're kind of spread out throughout the company. So, it's just it's worked out really well, and we all travel nicely together. So
that's great.
We'll
hang
see
on
what
to them.
happens with those.
Yes. Keep it going.
And with you guys, we need to go on a cruise with you guys here soon.
I know. It'll happen eventually.
It will. We're getting there.
You guys got the cruise bug now. It took you a little while, but you guys are on board.
Oh my gosh, so on board. That's a problem.
Yeah,
the whole family too. It's not just like us that are, but the whole family.
That's great. I mean, that it's hard to, if you like it and the kids don't, then it's
that'd be weird.
It, right?
Well, and in a lot of ways, it's like the best Disney value out there right now too.
Yeah,
I think
True.
that's a lot of it. You can't price wise. I mean, it's just hard to get to the parks for what it costs to do a cruise.
Yeah, I mean, as long as you kind of can pick and choose the cruises, because some of them are definitely not cheap.
Yeah, that's fair. But
yeah, this one was I think it was the price tag on this one was up there. It was I think 14,000 or something for a veranda room. Again, it's a very long itinerary, duration, so it's going to be pricey no matter what. But, but like you mentioned, like I was actually kind of surprised that it was cheaper or on par with going to Disneyland Paris as it is for you to, come to a domestic park. Because I've heard that definitely about going to Tokyo Disney. That it's much cheaper to go out there than a trip to Disneyland or Disney World right now. Yeah. So that's one that I really want to do too. So maybe we could pull that together.
We might be able to do that. I promised Annika we'd go, but before she graduates high school. So
got a few years.
Okay. There we go.
Not as many as you think.
Yeah, it'll go by real quick.
Yeah,
very quick.
So awesome. Well, thank you again. This is great. So
of course, anytime. Yeah, great to be on here. I'm glad I could do it. Hopefully, this brings some tips and some insight into people that are on the fence or thinking about doing this in future cruises. So, thank you very much.
All right. Well, that's all the time we have for today's episode, but we want to thank you for listening. You can email us at mouseearsinparadise@gmail.com and leave us some feedback or send us a note or send us a letter and say you want an email and say you want some stickers, and we'll send some stickers out.
As a letter.
And a letter.
Well, we'll mail the stickers.
You'll mail the stickers.
Probably
you send an
email.
Nobody's going to
send us an actual letter.
Yeah, in the mail. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I
think it's understood.
You'll get some stickers.
Yeah.
Send a mail.
All right. That's everything. So let's go.
All right. Go be magical. Bye.
Applause. We hope you've all enjoyed the show.